Good afternoon. This is Avraham Shira from Eretz Israel. It is Erev Shabbat. It is Erev Tisha. It is an interesting time in the Jewish calendar, a time, of course, of the losses of the Beit HaMikdash, and other unfortunate, unhappy events took place on this day. And so we mourn this day, the day that will be Sunday. It begins Saturday night in the Jewish calendar. But we have a day before that day, and that day is Shabbat, the holy day, the happy day, the day of joy, the day of gratitude, the day of thank you to God for everything He's given us. And we have festive meals, and we sing, and we dance if you're inclined. And so, how do we deal with mourning and joy that are one after the other? That we move from joy of Shabbat into the mourning of Tisha B'Av. And we're going to answer some other questions like, well, what is mourning? And what is sadness? What is joy? What is depression? So all these concepts are kind of circling around this weekend. This Shabbat Erev Tisha B'Av. So my general nature, I try to, I'll start with the hard stuff first and we'll move towards the easy stuff. So the hard stuff, of course, is the idea of mourning. What is mourning? It is a rabbinically instituted time that we are to feel the pain of loss. Because human beings don't like to feel pain. And we certainly don't like to contemplate loss. And so the rabbis, in their infinite wisdom, understood that if we don't have a Tisha B'Av, they're not going to feel anything, and they're going to forget about the Beit HaMikdash, and they're going to forget about the Meraglim who spoke bad about Eretz Israel, which Rabbi Nachman says is like the worst form of Lashon Hara, is just to speak bad about the Holy Land, which seems to be, kind of current lately, if you know what I mean. So, what are these ideas? And how do they come together? Depression and sadness and mourning. And on the other hand, joy, celebration, and gratitude. How can we embrace all of these very distant concepts from each other? Because that's really the sign of maturity, that's the sign of spiritual development, is that I can embrace contradictions, I can feel happy, and I can feel sad, and I can contemplate loss. And so all of these concepts come together this weekend. Now, the idea of mourning the loss of something is not such a high-level intellectual activity. You lose something, you feel bad. You lose your keys, you feel bad. You lose your wallet, you feel worse. And so on and so forth. You lose someone you love, and you feel, well, a lot worse. And we don't like to think about loss, and we don't like to think about death, because death represents ultimate loss. But in Judaism, no, we don't hold that way at all. We don't believe that death is the ultimate loss. Death is a transition. Death is a chance to recharge and reset and begin again. For the people who are left behind on this planet, I can understand the loss and the pain. But the soul, most souls, and I believe that most people are good and most people go to a good place, there's only joy when you get to heaven. Like, whoa, I got out of that place. Planet Earth, wow, let's move on. Isn't there another galaxy somewhere we can visit? Okay, so loss is something that the rabbis know we avoid, and therefore they say, no, you're going to have to sit on the floor. You're going to have to not eat and drink for a day. You're going to have to contemplate what we lost. And of course, that's even harder because we're mourning something that we never had. Now, how do you mourn something you never had? We never had the Beit HaMikdash in this generation, and for a long time behind us. We've had certain tzaddikim who are like a Beit HaMikdash, because the Beit HaMikdash is a building that houses the Shekhinah and offers the power of illumination along with the power of fixing, or tikkun, or what's called, I guess, in other languages, is atonement. Right? The Beit HaMikdash was the place where you could take the negative and turn it positive. Simply put, take the negative, turn it positive. You go downtown, you go to the Beit HaMikdash, you bring your little offering, you go home, you start again with God. And you try to be a better person, and that's the way it's supposed to work. But how do we mourn something we never had? Do you remember the Shekhinah hovering over the barbecue? That's what they had down at the Mizbeach. Do you remember the incense that you could smell for 20 kilometers? Do you remember the bread that stayed fresh and hot all week long without any coals? Do we remember the smell of what's called reach nichoach in Hebrew, the pleasant smell? But nichoach is lashon also of rest and of settling. It's the smell that causes you to settle down. Incense is designed to center us, to calm us. And something that smells good brings us to our center. Okay. And mourning in Hebrew is an interesting word. Avelut is mourning. An avel is a person who mourns. Litavel is to mourn, whatever grammatic structure you like. But the word, look at the word, Av Lamed. And if you spell it backwards, it's Liba. Av, the father. Lamed Bet, Aleph, the heart. The heart of the father. What is the heart of the father? Well, anybody who's had children knows a little bit about this. And if you're a man, maybe you even know a little bit more than how women feel like men, because men don't know how women feel as mothers. I'm afraid it's impossible to approach a woman's love for her child is an amazing thing to watch. But a man has his own heart and his own love. And that's what I'm pointing out here, Avelut. Why Avelut? What's the connection? Because anytime you see letters that flip and flop around in the Hebrew language, that means that the concepts are connected. That's part of the miracle, the holiness of the Hebrew language. So we have the concept of father and the concept of heart. The father heart is the father is the one who is responsible, the one who is gained experience in life and knows a little bit more about what's coming down the road. And young people, well, they're young and they're carefree and they haven't tasted the weight of responsibility, the weight of taking care of babies, the weight of dealing with all the people that want to put their hand in your pocket. Young people are free, and they're supposed to be, because they're not going to be free once they get married. In most cases, they're going to taste that weight. They're going to feel it on their shoulders, on their neck, that responsibility. So the father has the heart for his children because he knows a little bit more about the world that we're in. And there's a certain mourning. I think about my kids and my grandkids, and they're so wonderful, and they're so sweet, and they're so pure and innocent. And I'm like, was I ever like that? Amazing to think about. But I'm also looking ahead, and I'm like, whoa, they're going to have to get married too. They're going to have to get jobs and careers as well. They're going to have to build homes and take on all that responsibility for other human beings. So the heart of the father is the one who's thinking about what the other person's going to go through. And that's what God does for us. He's thinking about us. He knows what we're going to have to go through until the end of time. Or at least till we get back to heaven and the checkered flag, you cross the finish line. So Avelut, mourning, is a little bit that sense of, the loss of the innocence, the loss that the father, the heart of the father, can feel with the passage of time. Because as time passes and you get older, and I don't feel particularly old, but I guess my beard gives me away a bit, right? As time passes, you start to weigh things differently. Not only responsibilities, but you start to ask questions about life. And what am I doing here? And what's going to be? And what's going to be with these wonderful, sweet, innocent children? And so there's a touch of that sadness, of the mourning, the loss of the innocence of time. It takes place over time. So that gives us one window on the concept of mourning, of loss. Okay. Now, sadness is not mourning. Sadness is atzvut. It's from the language of the letters for the nerves. It's being anxious, and it makes you sad. But sadness is also not depression. In Hebrew, depression is dikaon, which comes from the word dacha, or to crush something. To feel crushed is to feel depression. The Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, burnt, whole stones, in their foundations. The city on flame, on fire. The idea of one nation going into another nation and destroying its capital and its temple, it's absurd to think about today. Oh, I think today we're gonna go to Rome and take out the Vatican. Sure. Okay, somebody did blow up Notre Dame, but that wasn't, it didn't take out the church. But in the old days, yeah, they brought an army from Babylon, and they brought an army from Rome, and they wiped out our temple, and they wiped out our capital city. Did we deserve it? Well, we have to ask God about that. I'm not God. My guess is that God is perfect, so he knows what he's doing. That's my guess. That's what we're told. And so even if it wasn't unfair, it's going to be made fair. Because good things are going to come out of bad things, because that's the essential nature. That's the essential nature of this world, is that good emerges from not good when we know how to process it properly. And when we know how to process the loss of the Beit HaMikdash, then we can come to the joy. And the rabbis say, any mish bona dat bedoro keilu bana Beit HaMikdash. If you build your mind to a true mind, it's as if you built the Beit HaMikdash, because the Beit HaMikdash is this processor of energy, and so is your mind. The Beit HaMikdash takes the negative, the sins, the things that we don't want to remember, it sends them away, because we have regret, and because we feel the loss, and we feel pain. But then we start again, and we're new again. Sadness, coming from the word for nerve, the nerves, right? Oh, wait a minute. Think back to the story. Adam was cursed with sadness. Be'etziv te'elchu lechem. In sadness you will eat your bread. B'zeh tapecha tochal. With the sweat of your brow. In other words, before this world, there wasn't the curse of eating bread when you're sad. Who wants to eat sad? So sadness is a little bit of the taste of this world. That whether you've got everything that you think you need in the world, you've got your mansion and your Ferrari and your pool and everything else that you want, it's still gonna let you down eventually. Eventually, you're not gonna be able. It's not gonna give you the joy that you've had when you first bought it. And that's the nature of all materialism. All materialism. Eventually, it will not come through. It will not give you that spark of joy. And the opposite, of course, is true with the Torah, because every time you go back to God, through his Torah, through prayer, through meditation, you get a new spark. Every time, until you're 120, or even 180 if you make it. So the materialism, it's a tool to get us somewhere. It's not the goal. And that's why it has sadness attached to it, and that's part of Adam's curse. So if you feel sad a little bit, someone scratches your Mercedes, okay. It hurts a little bit. It's a violation, yeah. But it's nothing compared to what people really go through in this world. Now, depression is something completely different. Depression is where you don't have the energy to move. You don't have the desire to get up. Not out of bed and not out of your house and not out of your life, maybe out of your life. Unfortunately, that happens. When dikaon in Hebrew, that feeling crushed. So we don't have hope, we don't have direction, we don't have meaning, we don't have purpose. We feel we don't have help, but actually, no, we do. That's not part of the curse. And that's not part of the mourning on Tisha B'Av. And it's asur to feel those things on Shabbat. Now, how does the rabbis come in and tell us that we can't feel things? You're not allowed to be unhappy on Shabbat. Well, how can you control my emotions? I feel unhappy. I have reasons to be unhappy. People mourn. They go into Shabbat out of mourning. Someone died on Thursday. You mourn on Friday. Shabbat is Shabbat. You don't mourn anymore. Saturday night comes, you go back into mourning. And that's exactly what we have this week. And it is a tremendous test to hold on to your strength and not allow yourself to be down on Shabbat under such circumstances. So we have a little taste of that this Shabbat. And the taste is that, what I tell myself is, well, we're going to have a Beit HaMikdash. And if it's not tomorrow or the next day or the next week or the next year, that's okay. That's fine. But I know we're going to have one. And it's going to come back, hopefully, b'meira b'yameinu in our days. And if not in my days, so who am I? My kids, my grandkids. Let them have the Beit HaMikdash. They can have the joy. I'll watch from my seats up in the, in the top of the stadium. But we're going to have it. So I can mourn the loss of it because I know it's going to come back. And that's the secret of the Gemara that tells us that Rabbi Akiva laughed when he saw a fox come running out of the Kodesh Kodeshim, the holiest place on earth. And the rabbis were weeping and they said, how could you cry, Akiva? I mean, how could you laugh, Akiva? They were crying. He says, how could I not laugh? I saw the prophecy that said the destruction is going to come. It came. And I saw the prophecy that says it's going to be rebuilt, and it's going to be rebuilt. So he's laughing at the irony. A fox came out of the Mikdash. Okay, so do I feel pain when I see a person who is begging for bread? Do I feel pain when you see a person whose body is damaged? If I don't feel that pain, where's my connectedness? If I want to mourn the Beit HaMikdash, I should be able to mourn my neighbors who lost something dear to them. You see, so the heart is not just, how do I want to say this? We allow things into our heart to feel them when it's personal. But the heart has the capacity to feel everything because our heart is connected to the heart of heaven. Our heart is an extension of the heart of the Shekhinah that feels all pain. And Rabbi Nachman says, when you feel pain, remember, you're feeling the pain of the Shekhinah in a little tiny capsule that you can handle. And everybody's pain is extended from there. So there's no need for self-pity because I'm feeling the pain of the divine presence in exile. I'm feeling the pain of God's reputation in the dirt, of people writing and saying stupid things on Facebook about God and they never even open the book. Well, I think God is this and I think God, come on, folks. You go into the lawyer's office and tell him what you think? No. So why are you going into God's office and telling him what he is? Sit down, put 20 years into the books, and then tell me what you think about God. But no, we have this chutzpah, this part of us that feels that we don't know anything about law or religion or medicine, but we all got an opinion about religion. Isn't that interesting? But okay, we're human. We have egos. That's fine. We're allowed to have. We need that ego, by the way. We need the good side of the ego that keeps us going and fighting and determined to succeed and to carry out the mission. And that's where we are. So this Shabbat, we have to not be depressed and not be sad and not think about the loss, whatever loss it might be. whether it's a dear loved one or an ancient building or the divine presence that you once saw like a dove flying in your mind's eye. And that loss, though, when you feel a little bit on Saturday night, on Motzi Shabbat, then you know you're connecting to the high place of the divine presence, because she's down too. And she misses her home, she misses her husband. And God's transcendence is way, way, way high in the skyscraper of reality. But his wife is down here with us. And the rabbis use that metaphor for a reason, to give us a sense, a tiny taste of what God must feel. Because he gave us the pleasure. Remember the pleasure you have in your wife? That's not something you bought in the store or earned. It's a gift. And it's an extension of God's pleasure in his wife. And so too all emotions. And all emotions become a network. And the difference is just how high the volume is turned up on your emotional capacitor. How much you can take. How much joy you can handle. How much sadness. And so, when we find it, and we see it that way, and I know when I first learned these things years ago, I felt so much better. I felt I'm integrated with reality. I'm not a spectator. And none of you are. You are part of it. You are in the story. And the divine presence and God and the Mikdash is your story too. And our job is to find our seat, you know. God bless you all. May you feel God's love for you and as an expression of your love for him. And then Shabbat should be the highest Shabbat, the Shabbat where you realize how one we really are when we say Shema Yisrael. And that Saturday night, Motzi Shabbat, that we appropriately enter Tisha B'Av, feel the loss, and then Motzi Tisha B'Av, well, we're going to have to celebrate again because the Beit HaMikdash is on the way. All the best to all of you. Shabbat Shalom.